I cannot think of a better way to finish a Tuesday night than with Sky News contributors Joe Hildebrand and Will Kingston. Welcome to you both. Any suggestion the Democrats might moderate their rhetoric just a touch, after assassination attempts on their opponents has been completely destroyed? Here's Kamala Harris promoting her new book on MSNBC.
A tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump. And these titans of industry are not speaking up.
Joe, is Trump a communist dictator? And if he's not, why is she saying that?
Well, I don't think Kamala Harris actually knows why she says anything. And it's, again, a very illuminating reminder of why the Democrats lost the 2024 presidential election and pretty much every other contest, including both the House of Reps and the Senate. Kamala Harris's explanations for anything are just almost impenetrable. I think part of what she might be saying is that Trump is trashing US democratic institutions, and there's plenty of truth in that, but also that he's waging a kind of trade war which harks back to protectionism with his tariffs that he's applying on all other countries, including Australia, although we are at the lowest end. And is she saying that that is the actions of a protectionist, socialist, communist dictator? I mean, she doesn't really seem to know, although that seems to be what she's appealing to the so-called titans of industry to speak out against. But the truth is that Trump is responding to a need felt by many American workers that they did feel like their industries were under threat from other countries and from climate change. And the Democrats simply failed to address that. They failed to properly harness their working class base. And that is a tragedy for the centre left.
Will Kingston, I personally find it hard to keep up. Before the election, Trump was a Nazi. A month ago, he was a fascist. This week, he's a communist. Have I got that right?
Something like that. Well, to Joe's point, the term itself doesn't really matter. If you ask Kamala Harris or indeed anyone who uses this type of language what communism or fascism means, I think they would struggle to give you a coherent answer. It's more that it's coded messaging to their supporters. They are trying to say that conservatives are dangerous, that they're extremists. And as a result of that, you can't reason with an extremist. You can't debate them. You can't argue with them. So it is acceptable to either censor them, to suppress their speech, or yes, to engage in political violence. There is a permission structure in this language, James, that enables political violence in a way that you do not see on the right. That's why I've said several times now in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination that what we're seeing on the left side of politics is that political violence is inherent in the ideology. There is a permission structure within the ideology in a way that there just is not on the right. This whole language is just a way to basically say you do not reason with these people. You actually engage in far more nefarious ways of stopping them. It is incredibly dangerous to our political discourse.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But here's the bad news. It gets worse. Kamala Harris went on to claim in this interview on MSNBC that she was so worried about Pete Buttigieg facing discrimination for being gay and damaging her campaign that, well, she discriminated against him for being gay. She did exactly what she said she was worried about to him. Have a listen.
To be a black woman running for president of the United States and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk. No matter how, I've been an advocate and an ally of the LGBT community my entire life. So it wasn't about any prejudice on my part.
Joe Hildebrand, she's been an ally of the LGBT community her whole life until it threatened her political campaign.
Yeah, look, the truth is that Pete Buttigieg would have been a far better candidate for the presidency than Kamala Harris was. I mean, she was absolutely woeful, and this was the Democrats' election to lose, and boy, did they lose it. This is the toxicity of identity politics, seeing everything through a prism of what someone's race is or what someone's sexuality is. Pete Buttigieg is an absolute standout star performer. We saw that in the primaries. We've seen that in virtually every public appearance. He's a decorated veteran as well. I think, having someone who, again, was chosen, and Joe Biden made this clear, on the basis of their sex and of the colour of their skin, has been an abject, absolute, thorough, complete failure for the left in the United States. And the fact that she is doing now, first she denied what Rachel Maddow said, that she said he couldn't run because he was gay. And then she said in her own impenetrable, voluminous Waldorf word salad way that, in fact, that's exactly what she did. I think that just highlights just how utterly destructive and self-destructive identity politics is. We need talent to rise to the top, regardless of what someone's race, gender, or sexuality is. And that would have put Peter Buttigieg eons ahead of Kamala Harris.
Well, Will Kingston, the funniest part of this for me is that Kamala Harris apparently thought Tim Walz, the guy she went with, was a middle-of-the-road choice.
Yeah, that's right. And Joe's right in pointing out that this is all just identity politics playing out in its most toxic form, because they looked at Tim Walz and they said, well, people are so stupid that they'll see someone who looks like, an average 50-year-old American, Midwestern type guy. And as a result of that, they'll jump at it. There's this bigotry. There's this sense that they just think that voters are stupid. They won't actually stop and listen to what they say, but because the guy goes shooting on the weekends, he's somehow going to resonate with middle America. This is why the left really struggles to win the votes of working class men, is because they patronise them. It's because they say, really, we think you're so stupid that if we put a pantomime up, you are going to run with it. They could do worse than actually stopping and going, cut the identity politics stuff, focus on policy, and stop belittling people by assuming that they're stupid whenever they get into these types of situations.
I tell you what, I hope they didn't choose Tim Walz because he goes out shooting on the weekends. Remember the video footage of him holding a gun? He was a guy who'd clearly never been shooting on a weekend, pretending that he had been. Just before we go, just something that caught my eye, I want to ask you about it. Myer has become the latest retailer to warn about the crime crisis, particularly in Victoria. But addressing the company's investors, the CEO spoke about their current situation, and I just want to look at the language used. Here's a quote from The Australian. Myer had spent an extra $4 million in security measures, which had helped generate a 20% fall in shrinkage, which is theft. Joe, I'm just wondering, crime is such a big problem. Why won't major retailers that are calling out the problem of crime call crime crime? Why use the word shrinkage? Are they afraid of calling it for what it is?
Yeah, I thought that shrinkage was something that just happened to George Costanza when he went swimming in cold water. In fact, I think it's a retail term for basically the difference between the value of the stock that you have sold versus the revenue that you are getting in for that stock. So there's obviously a difference when there's been shoplifting or other factors going on. When there is a difference between the value of the stuff that has disappeared and the value of the money that you've got to replace that is the difference. And so that is the shrinkage. There's the shrinking value of stuff as it disappears out the door, apparently without having been paid for by a large number of customers.
Okay. There you go. I thought maybe they were trying to be politically correct. Joe Hildebrand, Will Kingston, thanks for joining me.